Hello, and welcome to this edition of CyberMedia podcast with Shubhendu Parth. Today, we have a very special guest who does not need much introduction. A very warm welcome to Dr. Abhay Karandikar, Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology with the Government of India. Dr. Karandikar is a renowned academician, technocrat, researcher, and he has been the driving force behind the standardization and the standards initiative for 5G in India, and he is also driving and taking a lead position and as a pillar on driving the 6G initiatives in the country. He has multiple patents and he is a doer and leader par excellence. And in his current role as the Secretary, Department in Science and Technology, he has been driving the science and technology development, the scientific research in the country. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
As we have seen, and recently in July is the season of monsoon. And for the science and technology community, the scientific research in India, we have received the monsoon dhamaka, as we can say, in the form of the cabinet's decision to announce the rupees 1 lakh crore research and development innovation, or the RDI scheme, which is a path-breaking initiative, first of its kind in India, for the private sector and startup community research funding. So I would like to understand, sir, how does the government plan to implement it, and what are the nuts and bolts of this scheme?
Okay, so first of all, let me just tell you, as you rightly mentioned, that the research, development and innovations scheme is one of the most transformative initiatives of the Government of India, in the sense that its objective is to support research and development in the private sector in the cutting edge area. Now, this scheme will be implemented as a special purpose fund within the Anusandhan National Research Foundation, ANRF. And the way in which it will be implemented is that this special purpose fund will identify the second level fund managers, who could be alternate investment fund or development financial institutions or focused research organizations. And the money will be then given to the second level fund manager, and then these second level fund manager will select the specific R&D projects of the private sectors. Either it could be the corporates or it could be the startups in the sunrise sectors which have been approved by the cabinet, and that includes several cutting edge and deep tech areas. Now, the financing support will be done either through a concessional loans to the corporates, which will be sort of an unsecured loan, or through equity in the startups, or through a combination of both. The sunrise sectors which I mentioned will be like sectors such as clean energy or energy transitions, or deep tech sectors like robotics, drones, space, defense, quantum, and biotechnology, biomanufacturing, then synthetic biology, pharmaceuticals. So, I mean, all these cutting edge sectors have been identified, for which this fund will invest in R&D in the private sector.
Understood, sir. Just curious, that why did the government decide to go for this two-tier kind of a model rather than taking the direct technology sovereign fund kind of a route?
No, I think the reason for the going for this two-tiered structure will be because we would really like to be, as a government, we would really like to be away from making retail investment decisions in identifying the specific projects of the private sector. What our intention is that we will make the broad implementation framework and broad implementation guidelines which can be followed by the second level fund manager. But the investment decisions in which particular company or which particular startups you should do investment will be left to the investment committee best managed by the professionals at the second level fund managers, which could be the alternate investment funds or, as I mentioned, other financial institutions. And that is the reason this decision has been taken, because the government wants to be away from making the investment decisions related to identifying a specific startup or a specific industry. We have identified the broad sectors and we will identify the broad guidelines.
So basically you are saying that the government will fund the research and R&Ds and all, but at an arm's length.
Yes.
And though there would be a control mechanism. So, but before we move to that, I would like to understand that the philosophy behind this initiative. How would this shape India's technology and innovation landscape? And basically, or in other words, if you can elaborate on the outcomes of this fund and what would be the mechanism of disbursal?
Okay. So I think the broad philosophy has been that, as you have seen, the private sector or the industry in our country has generally shied away from investing in research and development in the cutting edge areas. And one of the reasons has been that these investments are typically very risky. They also require the long gestation period. For example, drug discovery or something like gene therapy, which requires, a lot of time, in order a product can be developed and sold it in the market. So there are a lot of uncertainties, there are long gestation period, and therefore, we have seen the private sector has not really invested in R&D in the country. In fact, if you look at the gross expenditure on R&D, then the private sector contributions has been actually in the range of 30 to 35%. But on the other hand, there has been a recent investments in the startup sectors. There has been a lot of venture capital investment that has happened in the recent years. And we believe that that has been possible because of the enabling framework and the policies which the government adopted. Now, the basic philosophy behind this fund is that if the government takes the initial risk in terms of providing a patient capital to the private sectors in the cutting edge areas or the deep tech areas, then in the coming years that can catalyze more private sector investments for at the growth stage or for the scaling purposes. So I think that is really the philosophy that hopefully, in the coming years, it will actually help in increasing the private sector investments in the deep tech area.
Understood, sir. There's another aspect that I would like to understand and ask about is this fund focused only on the Indian entities, or are you also open to investing in companies or startups that are doing cutting edge technologies to get the tech know-how in India, but not an Indian entity, or for example, the MNCs which have R&D centers in India?
No, I think clearly the objective of this fund is for our nation to develop the strategic autonomy and develop a product, country. So therefore, it will be primarily Indian entities. But it could be both corporates and the startups. And in addition to funding the projects for the technology development and commercializations, this fund will also support acquisition of the technologies. Suppose some startups or some corporates project wants to acquire the technology from abroad, then this fund can also be used to support the acquisition of the technologies. But primarily, I think the intention behind this is to sort of create an ecosystem of Indian companies doing cutting edge R&D.
Understood. So There's another aspect about the accountability, since it's a government fund, which is basically the citizens' money, if we look at it. In your earlier interactions, you have mentioned about the accountability or the utilization of the government funds, that the government is looking at liberalized financial rules.
Correct.
Could you elaborate on that, and what is the status of it as of now?
So you are absolutely right. Since it is a public fund, there has to be both transparency and also accountability. But we do not want, the nature of such, funding is that we do not want it to be tied down to the general financial rules of the government. So we are currently in the process of preparing the implementation guidelines, investment framework, and liberalized financial rules. Department of Science and Technology is working on this. And we will soon be taking the approval from the Ministry of Finance on this. And once these implementation frameworks and liberalized financial rules are finalized, then the scheme will be rolled out as a special purpose fund within ANRF. So we are ensuring that these financial rules, while they ensure accountability and transparency, yet they are flexible and general enough for meeting the objectives of this fund.
Sorry to play the devil's advocate, and we have seen the policy I won't say paralysis, but it stretches to a very long period. And for example, there have been multiple policies, let me not name them, but how soon or what is a period that you're looking at in terms of getting this clear and out of way and rolling it out?
Yeah, so I think we are working on a tight schedule. So as you rightly mentioned, that there may be a genuine concern that this may get delayed, but we are currently in the process of preparing the implementation framework and guidelines and financial rules. They will all be done by August or September. And then, in the next 2 months, we should be able to roll out. So I'm hoping by December, we should be in a fully operationalized fund. Where, we should be able to identify, specific investments that is happening through this fund.
So, which means by we begin the year 2026 with a bang from the
Yes. I hopefully.
It means, that brings me to another question on the, since it's a two-tier thing and you'll be dispersing the funds through a third party, the financial institutions and all. So what would be the mechanism or the criteria or the metrics to evaluate these projects? And will there be a broader guideline from the government except for the, mentioning that these are the sunrise industries that we have for?
No. I think there will be broader guideline because while sunrise sectors are there, we would also like to make sure that the projects levels are at TRL level 4 and above. So they are better than prototype. That is number one. Number two is that they should be really cutting edge and deep tech projects. This fund will not be used to subsidize a routine R&D of corporates or the private sectors. And also, in the case of startups, this fund will not be used to, fund sort of non-deep tech startups. So this is specifically for the deep tech and cutting edge technologies. So that will be really one of the basic criteria, that the project has to be really cutting edge. It has to be at TRL level 4 and above, because this fund will not be used to fund basic research. For the basic research in the academia and the scientific institutions, we already have a core mechanism of Anusandhan National Research Foundation, and that will be used to fund the basic research.
On the evaluation part, there's another aspect to it. Once you have evaluated the project, the funding is be done. Now, how would you evaluate the outcome of those projects? Is it a very commercial kind of a evaluation, or how would you evaluate that?
I think we have defined certain outcome metrics, One is, of course, at the fund level, what should be the KPIs. Another one, at the project level, at the company level. So at both levels, so at the fund level, of course, we would like to see that in the next 10 years, we have, some really breakthrough technologies that have come out of it. That could be, either the products or the kind of markets that we have captured, or the breakthrough patents that we have got. So we are currently defining those metrics both at the fund level and also at the project or the company level.
In fact, I was listening to one of your earlier interviews, and you had mentioned that you are the government is looking at a valuation of 10x, maybe since you're investing 100,000 crores, so you're looking at 10 lakh crores of kind of in a 10 years time. Or
yeah, so I think we are looking, because basically what we are saying is that this fund will act as more as a catalyst for bringing in more private sector investment. So obviously we are hoping that the private sector investment will grow multifold in the deep tech areas in the coming years because of this fund.
So there has been a concern also. There's been a lot of debate, though people are and the community is generally happy about the RDI fund. There is a concern that despite rising ambition and different policy initiatives, R&D expenditures continues to be much below the global benchmark. What policy or structural change are being taken to mobilize private capital into deep tech research and bridge this funding gap?
Yeah, so I think, as you mentioned, our gross expenditure on R&D as a percentage of the GDP has been low. It's in the range of 0.6 to 0.7. But 70% of that has been, 70% of that has been by the government, 65 to 70%, and 30 to 35% is by the private sector. Now, how do we, bring more private sector investment? And as I mentioned, that private sector generally has shied away from investing in the deep tech areas. We are hoping that through this fund, when we mitigate the initial risk, it will help the private sector to bring in more investment, and that way we can see even as a percentage of the GDP, the investments of the private sector will grow in the coming years. Now, the government itself has increased its spending on R&D in a significant way. We have established Anusandhan National Research Foundation, and through ANRF now we have increased the funding that more than what it used to be earlier for funding R&D in the academic institutions and universities and research labs. We have also launched several mission mode programs also, like our department has launched National Quantum Mission or National Cyber Physical Mission and so on. So overall, I think the government has been increasing its expenditure on R&D, and hopefully I think in the coming years the private sector will also start investing in the technology R&D.
Since you mentioned ANRF, what early outcomes or structural shifts are visible? The science, if we can say.
Yeah, I think in the ANRF, it has been only recently launched, last 1 year. In the ANRF, we have taken some initiatives, either in the terms of capacity building of the early researchers. So we have launched PM Early Career Grant also. We have launched initiatives to help the state public universities, and that was a program called PAIR. And we have also launched mission mode programs, which are more collaborative, multiple institutions with industry participations for a solution-focused research. So, for example, one mission mode program has been launched in electric mobility. And I think in the pipeline now there are several mission mode programs will be launched. The structural shift that ANRF has taken is that we are now also focusing on multiple PI, multiple institutions with industry participation, such of bigger, collaborative projects as well, which will address, our country's problems and can also be, addressing the global challenges.
An interview with you cannot be complete without talking about standards, and specifically since the NTP 2025, the draft policy was announced yesterday, and as you are aware, the draft policy talks about India's taking a pole position in the 6G standards and getting a 10% of the IP, which was already mentioned earlier, but since it is included in the policy, it takes a more important space. So trying to understand this, that from the global IPR perspective, the IP and the standard essential patent or SEP creation, how do you see the RDI supporting it?
Okay, so what has happened is that if you see the evolution of the cellular mobile communications from 2G to 5G, the IPR shift has happened from the Western world, like from the US and the Europe, to the Asia Pacific. Now in the 5G, I think the China, South Korea, they hold a significant number of patents. There is an opportunity for India to now contribute to 6G. In 5G, our contributions in the 5G standards was mostly through academia. Whether it is IIT Bombay or IIT Madras or IIT Hyderabad or other institutions such as CVIT, it primarily happened through the academic institutions and maybe one or two startups. But largely, our private sector industries, their participation in the 5G standards was limited. Hopefully, I think this RDI fund, which is going to incentivize R&D in the private sector, this will also, sort of help them to do the R&D in cutting edge areas, which is 6G and related areas. And that way, they will not only be able to contribute intellectual property and standards essential patents, but also, develop products and technologies in the 6G space.
Thanks a lot. Since you mentioned China and Taiwan and all, is there a learning in terms of for the funding mechanism, the RDI? Is there a learning that we can still take from those countries and in how the government has been supporting it?
No, I think when we were conceptualizing this fund, obviously we had studied the global models, where the government have invested in private sector R&D, whether it is China or whether it is other countries. And obviously in these countries, the government has provided support to the private sector. In earlier, our in the government recently, we have provided support to industries either in the form of schemes such as PLI schemes or DLI schemes, which are more in the production and manufacturing. But now this is the first time the government is coming forward to support research, development and innovation.
Understood, sir. The last question, as you mentioned, we can expect the announcements and all by end of this year or early January and all. So the industry still has around 4 to 5 months to prepare. What should they do? How should they prepare and gear up for this?
No, I think we are urging the industry to really come forward and take, leverage this fund, take this, and therefore be prepared for taking the risks in the cutting edge sector. The government is ready to help, but ultimately, it is the businesses, whether it is startups or corporates and the innovators, they really need to sort of come forward, take advantage of the opportunities created by the government and contribute towards developing globally competitive products and technologies.
Will the government or the DST be what process would they adopt to create a panel of these financial institutions, or will there be a mechanism that they would be applying to get impaneled for this scheme?
No, yeah. So I think we will be rolling out this process soon in September or October for selecting the second level fund managers. As I mentioned, that we will have a transparent process, and currently we are working on what could be the guidelines for selecting the second level fund manager. They're almost final. Maybe in September we would publish them, and then go into the process of selecting the second level fund manager.
Thank you so much, sir, and it was wonderful speaking to you today and understanding the nitty-gritties and the nuts and bolts. And I hope, and the nation hopes, actually the entire scientific community hopes, that this would really create the impact, the desired impact that we are looking at from the Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat perspective. And with this, thanks again for joining us today. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.